have this assignment that I have to complete. It's a discussion, and I was wondering if I could get some help with you.
Yeah, of course. What's it about?
I have to talk about a poem and discuss how it relates to modernism.
Okay, so is it this one right here?
Yes.
Okay. All right, and do you have the poem with you?
Yes, it's right here.
And then you have the handout about modernism?
Yes, I read through it, but I still have a few questions.
Okay, so what do you think so far? How do you think that this relates to modernism?
So far, I pointed out key words such as widow, sorrow, and grief, and I feel that relates to modernism because it's like pessimistic and it's a little sad, and just mainly the imagery that I've noticed.
Yeah, the imagery for this poem really does kind of represent how she is like really upset about her husband's death and everything. And another way that it relates to modernism is the irony in it, because this is like talking about springtime and flowers and everything, and you would think that it would be really beautiful, but it's actually representing something very tragic and upsetting. So when it's spring, you would think of like rebirth, but it's actually death that she's talking about.
Yeah, I didn't notice that at first, but that's a good point. And then I'll need to do a discussion.
Okay, so let's make a list so far of the quotes that we can use to help you relate this to modernism.
Okay.
Throughout this passage, what do you think you could use?
Sorrow is my own yard.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm gonna need a little more help.
Okay, no problem. Another way that you could relate it to modernism is, you see this last point right here where it says language is often but not always spare. You see how she's not really speaking in complete sentences?
Okay, yeah.
That's another way that you could relate it to modernism.
Okay. And then, can we use some imagery as well?
Yeah, of course. What do you want to use?
Maybe something in this passage, because it's talking about like the bright colors of spring, but it's also relating to the grief that she has.
Yeah, so that could also go with irony too.
Okay. So would there be other points that I can use instead of like irony and imagery, or are those like the main ones?
I think those are the main ones throughout the passage, but you could also use symbolism.
Okay.
Because she mentions the plum tree and the white flowers here, but then she also mentions them here, and I think that kind of relates to her husband and the death, because whenever she sees that, she thinks of him.
Okay. It's kind of symbolism, but I feel it's also ironic.
Yeah, that's true.
Because I feel like black is like death, and like white and black are kind of opposites.
You're right.
So in this part, when she said she'd want to fall into the flowers and sink into the marshes, does that just mean like she's like really sad and just like wants to go there to try to get closer to her husband, or?
You could interpret it that way. When I read it, it actually is deeper than that, I think. I think it's a way of her wanting to commit suicide so that she's like with her husband.
Oh, okay.
Because here it says that she was with him for 35 years. And it doesn't say anything here. Here it just kind of says that she's describing the flowers, but there's no like suicidal intent, but then when you get to hear, you kind of see how
Okay.
deep the grief has really gotten to her.
Okay.
And that kind of fits in with the whole pessimistic point of view that modernists have.
So then we have a few main points. So I feel I could use that to get started on my discussion.
Yeah.
Can I have some help? Just like, how would you like start off a discussion like that, like with the main point that includes it all? Or-
Well, with a discussion, you always want to start it out with the name of the poem and then who wrote it.
Okay.
That way we know what you're talking about, because in your assignment it says that you can pick one of the following poems. So definitely start out with that. And then you want to start out with, this is modernist because, and then I would go with your main point and then lead into the other ones too. Because you said how this is symbolic, but it is also ironic. And so you can kind of like segue it that way.
Okay.
And then you want to use your direct quotes too, and make
Oh,
sure that
yeah.
you format those correctly and you put them in quotations and everything.
Oops. So then it's the widow's lament. And lament, isn't that also kind of sad and...
Mm-hmm. And you can even include like a definition of that in your discussion to kind of
Okay.
show your professor that you went the extra mile to look it up.
Okay. So could I do something like The Widow's Lament in Springtime by William Carlos Williams is an example of modernism, and then period start off like modernism, or the irony, symbolism, and
You could do it in list form. What I would do is I would say the poem, and then I would list the poem and who wrote it, and
Okay.
said represents modernism in many ways, because, and then you could like kind of lead in
Okay.
with that.
And it represents modernism. In many ways. And then start my new sentence and like
Yeah.
explain how it represents it.
And then you could segue to other points.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't look like your discussion has to be very long, just 5 to 8 sentences.
Okay. So then would something like the irony in this poem... Wait, let me think about this. Examples such as irony show? No.
Maybe you could say an example of irony can be seen where, and then you could lead into the quote that you want to use for that.
Okay.
He says that you are supposed to use a lot of quotes from the passages,
Okay.
and so just make sure you do that. That way you can give proper examples.
Alright. So for that, I was thinking the part where she was talking about the white today,
Mm-hmm.
and then that's when she thinks about her husband when it's dark. But I want to save that one for later, and maybe do the one when she's talking about just like spring.
Yeah, you could do that.
And that brings like new life, and
Mhm.
she's talking about death.
I really like this quote right here where it says, "with cold fire," because that's ironic because fire's not cold, but in a way it's like she's so chilled and like really, but she's also very like upset, so she's like chilled to the bone, but there's like that fiery like passion behind it too.
Oh, okay. And then when I quote, do I just put parentheses around it? And
You're gonna, if you want to say blah 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 can be seen in the quote, and then like as follows or whatever, you could put a comma and then put the quote in quotations. And since this is a poem, what you're gonna do is you would just list it. You don't have to press enter or whatever. Just put like a slash and then keep going.
Okay. Would I have to include the line numbers too, or?
No, you should be fine without it.
Okay.
He didn't specify that you have to do that, and this is a pretty short poem.
Okay. So I might just use the cold fire for now when I use my quote, and then just explain this part.
You
but
could
not-
paraphrase it.
Yeah, because it's
Okay.
a little longer, so I
Mhm.
don't want to write all of it out. And when I'm talking, should I do like an example of irony and then from there transition to like the symbolism, or?
Yeah, I mean, you could start out with that, with the cold fire being ironic, and then go on to the white flowers and how they are, and you could say another example of irony is, and then list that, and then you could also say this is also a form of symbolism.
Okay. So that was
Right there.
okay. Okay.
And then just make sure to include why it's ironic and why it's symbolic.
Okay. Oh, the plum tree is white. Okay. So I could like say something like when another form of irony is when she is describing the plum tree as being white, and it reminds her of her husband, but her husband died, and death can be represented by the color black.
Mhm.
Okay.
You got some color psychology going on in there.
And then I could transition and say the white and black is the white is symbolism, right? No.
Mhm. You would probably say white is symbolic.
That sounds better. It is symbolic for like her husband. No. Why was it symbolic again?
It says how you kind of get the impression that she would like sit with her husband in the yard and like look at
Okay.
their flowers and stuff, and it goes on to say that like, but the grief in my heart is stronger than they, for they were my joy formerly. Today I notice them and turn away forgetting. And so, like, seeing them, it should make her happy, but she's just like really saddened by the sight of them.
So it's like he used to represent like the happy memories, and then
Mhm.
now it's just the time she doesn't have with her husband
Mhm.
anymore. Okay. So with there, should I talk about the colors as well, and then just like
Yeah.
finish it up with that? Would that be enough, or?
Well, how many sentences do you have so far?
About 4.
Okay, so you need at least one more. So you could do that.
And then could I like finish with like a closing sentence, or would I need one for discussion?
You should.
Okay.
Have you said anything about like the pessimistic point of view?
No.
Okay, maybe that would be a good place to kind of end it with.
Okay.
Because you want to use as many examples as possible about why this is modernist.
Okay.
What would be a good quote for you to use to represent that?
Like, I like this section. It's just she's not that happy,
Mhm.
but it's a little long.
Well, what? Because your professor's gonna know this poem, and so they're gonna know what you're talking about. Is
Okay.
basically what I'm saying, and so it's okay if you cut some of it out. Maybe if you started from here and to like there.
Yeah, like turning away. I really like that part.
Mhm.
I wanted to include it.
Okay, I mean that's not very long, so you should be fine including that.
Okay.
And remember that you don't just like drop a quote in, you always want to lead up to it. And so you could say, blah, 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 this represents modernism through the pessimism of something like that.
Okay.
Because if you just start out a sentence with quotes, it's kind of orphan quotes. You're just like dropping it on a doorstep. And so you want to have like some kind of lead up to it.
Okay. So I could say something like let me think about this. Could I say something like in the story when the woman is describing? No, I don't like that. I shouldn't do nothing, just like, okay, a former pessimist, that word, is here, but I should, like, somewhat make it flow better.
Yeah, and you want to relate it to modernism too.
Okay.
So maybe start out with modernism, how the view, it like how modernism,
Characteristics of modernism?
yeah, it tends to be more pessimistic,
Okay.
and then go on to the quote.
So, like, modernism and modernists? Is it?
Another characteristic of modernism, like you said before, is pessimism.
Pessimism,
Mm-hmm.
which is shown through
Exactly.
this, which is shown through right here. Should I just start right there, or should I say which is shown through the passage?
It, you could just say shown where and then comma.
Okay. And you said to do the separate it?
Mm-hmm. And so
Okay.
you're gonna do the line, and then do a slash, and then do the line and do a slash.
Okay. So I think I'm about done with this. I just have to finish writing it up, but I think I have a better understanding of what my assignment was.
Okay. Yeah. Do you feel more confident with it?
Yeah, I feel like I learned a lot, and this was better than what I would have done in the
that's
first
good.
place.
That's good. Okay. Yeah. Is that all you need help with?
Yeah, that's it for
Okay.
today.
Awesome. I'm glad I could help.
Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.